Makes the biggest difference to your health? Exercise, mostly walking, so not triathlons. If you think about your typical day, so there's 24 hours, and so you might spend most of your day, this varies obviously, but couch surfing, sitting at work, obviously sleeping. And what the evidence that I'm going to show you kind of tells me is the best thing you can do for your health is to spend half an hour being active, maybe an hour, and that if you can do that, you can realize all the benefits. In patients with knee arthritis who receive 1 hour of treatment 3 times a week, reduce their rates of pain and disability by 47%. In older patients, it reduced progression to dementia and Alzheimer's by around 50%. For patients at high risk of diabetes and coupled with other lifestyle interventions, it reduced progression to frank diabetes by 58%. Postmenopausal woman who had 4 hours a week of the treatment had a 41% reduction in the risk of hip fracture. It reduced anxiety by 48% in a big meta-analysis. Patients suffering from depression, 30% were relieved with low dose, and that bumped to 47% as we increased the dose. Following over 10,000 Harvard alumni for over 12 years, those that had the intervention had a 23% lower risk of death than those who didn't get the treatment. It's the #1 treatment of fatigue, and of course the kind of outcome of choice, or my favorite outcome, is quality of life, which is really all of the above and really about making your life better. And this treatment has been shown over and over again to improve quality of life. So let's just take a quick walk through some of the literature. So Stephen Blair, he's a professor at the Arnold School of Public Health at the University of South Carolina, and he looked at this in what's called the Aerobic Center Longitudinal Study, which followed over 50,000 men and women over time. And along the left side of this graph is something called attributable fractions, which is a kind of fancy word, but it's the estimate of the number of deaths in a population that would have been avoided if that specific risk factor had been erased. So for example, turning a smoker into a non-smoker, or a couch potato into a daily walker. And along the bottom is the typical risk factors. You can see the hypertension is incredibly important, and so on and so forth. But the one that kind of applied the most risk was this sort of mysterious CRF, which is cardiorespiratory fitness, which is really low fitness. So low fitness was the strongest predictor of death. Blair's work is interesting. He also did another trial looking at obesity. What he found was, sort of 2 things. One is obesity and no exercise. That's a very bad combination, and that's where we saw many of the negative consequences of obesity from a health point of view. But if the obese person was active, even if they didn't have the weight loss, but were just active and obese, that was much, much better, and that the exercise ameliorated much of the negative consequences of obesity. But essentially, more activity is better. But I must say the rate of return seems to decline after 20 or 30 minutes a day. So if you're being active less than 150 minutes a week, or more if you're a kid, an hour a day if you're a kid, my flag goes up in the clinic. So if we took the Nurses Health Study, women who went from 0 activity to just 1 hour a week reduced their heart disease rates by almost half. In the 90s, Japan required all employers to conduct annual health screenings for their employees. And so a large gas company in Japan called Osaka used this to answer a great question. So if people's walk to work was longer, did that reduce their chance of serious health problems? So in this example, high blood pressure. And what they found is under 10-minute walk, no difference. 11 to 20-minute walk, 12% reduction in rates of high blood pressure or hypertension. And over 21-minute walk, a 29% decrease in rates of high blood pressure. So the authors calculated that for every increase of 10 minutes in your walk to work, there was a 12% reduction in the likelihood of getting high blood pressure. Is looking at stents. So this is something we commonly do down medicine. So you can see on the left here the artery's blocked. On the right, a vascular surgeon's gone in and put in a balloon, opened it up, and left a stent to keep it open, which makes great sense. So a German researcher named Rainer Hambrecht looked at this with about 100 cardiac patients. He got half the group to exercise, and by that I mean 20 minutes a day on an exercise bicycle, and then once weekly 60-minute aerobics class. And the other half got the high-tech stent and just their sort of normal activity. And after 1 year, 88% of the exercises were event-free compared to 70% of the people that got a stent. So both worked, but I find it sort of incredible that the low tech made a bigger difference. And you have to remember that the stent just fixes one part of the heart. that being sedentary is bad for your health, but a researcher named Leonard Veerman wanted to quantify this, and he did so down in Australia in a big study they did there. They found, compared with persons who watch no TV, those that spend a lifetime average of 6 hours a day watching TV can expect to live about 5 years left. I mean, that's incredible. But then I think, oh, who watches 6 hours a day of TV? And it turns out the average adult in the USA spends about 5 hours a day watching TV or screens. So I find this fascinating that we never think of the TV as something that's bad for our health, but clearly it's as powerful as many other risk factors for chronic disease.